In a viral thread on Twitter, a woman named Michelle Tandler, a progressive, asks why it is that California has so much money, billions of dollars, and progressive domination, yet they still can't solve any of their problems. Homelessness, worse than ever, crime skyrocketing, people generally suffering, human waste in the streets. How could this be? California is run by Democrats who claim that they're fighting for all of these causes. They have billions of dollars. They win every election. They outnumber Republicans 2-1. So what is it? Many Democrats, moderate liberal types, are starting to wake up and realize it's not the other. It's not the Republicans. It's the Democrats. They're lying. They're not solving these problems. Nothing is getting done. And now we are seeing the results of this. A mass exodus from blue states to red states. Now, isn't that interesting? It could be good news. It could be bad news, depending on your perspective. There's one individual who says that he's progressive or liberal and that he doesn't like the politics of Florida, but clearly what happened where he lives isn't working in his blue state, so he's got to go to Florida. And people are rightfully pointing out, how could you complain about the politics you are fleeing, but then try and argue the politics of where you're going are worse? That makes no sense. So here's the good news. People who are like-minded, people who believe in freedom, are getting away from these failed states and rejecting failed Democrat policy. They're moving to places like Texas and Florida. But the bad news is many of these people may actually just be liberals and progressives now living in their squalor that they voted for over and over again, and they're going to bring those policies right along with them. I don't know for sure. If I was to make an assessment, I would say that most of the people fleeing are probably more moderate or right-leaning. And there's one poll showing that independents favor Republicans 2-1 in the midterms. They're not going to be voting Democrat. And this is where things get more worrisome to me. I've often talked about conflict, cold civil war, whatever you want to call it, the fourth turning, internal conflict. And as Bill Maher stated, there can't be a civil war in this country because the Mason-Dixon line would run through Nana's kitchen, as he liked to say. The idea being, we can't really get into a hot civil war. Sure, we can be polarized and fighting, but it's you arguing with your grandmother. That's not going to be a fight, right? It's kids arguing with their parents. But what happens when people who are staunch Democrats living in the matrix, not realizing in California you have a Democrat supermajority? The problems you face are caused by them. They don't see it. They don't realize it. They'll stay there. What about the people in New York under these harsh mandates where the police are coming in and arresting people and asking children for their papers? They're totally fine living there. They're totally fine empowering a state to carry out these edicts. But there are many people who are polarized in the other direction or becoming polarized who are leaving and saying, I don't want to live this way. And thus, ideological polarization, the line running through Nana's kitchen, is shifting. It's becoming geographical polarization. And if this trend continues, then you will have very, very different ideologies across state lines. And then the Mason-Dixon line is simple. Whatever you want to call it, Bill Maher. The line dividing us will be territorial. And that's when problems can erupt. But I don't think that we're looking at the apocalypse. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed outcome. I'm saying we must change trajectories. It's actually possible people wake up to this. We even had Jennifer Rubin, who claims to be conservative, but she's a never-Trumper, talking about how Omicron isn't that bad. And you're starting to see these Democrats wake up and say, this is not right. Maybe they will take back the party from the capital, the crony capitalist elites. Maybe they'll take the party back from the extremist, woke, whatever. Or maybe they'll flee to red states. And maybe the red states will turn bluer and then the whole country will shift in the wrong direction and then people fight. I don't know. But it's happening. Now, I want to read for you this thread from Michelle Tandler talking about what's going on in California, showing you that there are Democrats, moderate liberals, waking up. But I want to start with the hard data. What's happening in the United States? We have this from American Experiment talking about Minnesota losing residents, and then a graph showing just how serious the exodus is from the deep blue states into the more red states. Before we get started, Head over to timcast.com, become a member, and help support our work. As a member, you are funding the journalists at timcast.com who are writing all of this amazing journalism and fact-checking, figuring out what's going on. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members-only podcasts like the Timcast IRL podcast. We have a ton of behind-the-scenes conversations, uncensored conversations. With your support, we can keep doing this work. But don't forget to also smash that like button right now, subscribe to this channel if you have not already, and share this show with your friends wherever you can. That is the most important and powerful thing you can do to help out our work. But let's read what's going on with these states. The first thing I want to show you, just this graph right here, this chart. California lost 367,299 people. New York lost 352,185 people. Illinois lost 122,460 people. Next up is the states who gained. Florida gained 220,890. Texas gained 170,307. Arizona next up with 93,000. Now, what's interesting here is, as people flee California and New York, they're not all rushing to Florida. They're spreading out among many different states. The big blue states are in free fall. Why? Failed policy. People are starting to wake up and they're saying enough. Now, in this article from American Experiment, they specifically highlight Minnesota, saying Minnesota lost 13,453 residents to other states in 2021, the most in more than 30 years. So let's take a look at this chart again and talk about what may be driving people to leave these areas. Well, Minnesota lost a decent amount of people, 13,500 just about. Could it be the George Floyd riots? Could it be the chaos and the violence? Could it be the Kim Potter trial, the Derek Chauvin trial? Yeah, maybe. Maybe they're saying, look, this is too crazy for us. And here's what you really need to understand. Population density. These states like Minnesota or Maryland that are losing all of these people, they're not as populous as California. California, I think, is around 35 million people. So losing hundreds of thousands is massive. Losing tens of thousands in a smaller state is also massive. But you take a look at California and New York, and it seems to me, it's my assumption, would be that COVID policies, harsh lockdowns, and extremism from the state are driving people away, and they're thirsting for freedom, which is why Florida and Texas are the top two states. Florida and Texas, open for business, live your life, do your thing. Now, I don't know if this is going to result in extreme geographical polarization. I think it contributes to it. But again, it could be Democrats leaving these states. In 2020, we saw something interesting. The same thing, basically. In 2020, the top outbound state was Illinois. Then New York, California, New Jersey, Maryland. But we can see you also have Michigan. Michigan on the list. Why? I think COVID policy is fairly obvious. During the lockdown, people said, I don't want to live in these places. They also mentioned here at North American Moving Services, that's done the data, property taxes. 2018 property taxes in Illinois are insanely high. And people seem to be moving to areas, well, it's probably not fair to say based on property tax. I do think it's interesting, however. No, I think the issue here is COVID policy. I think it's absolutely COVID policy and failed Democrat policy. And we can get into all of this. The first thing I want to mention, though, when it comes to COVID, we have this story from LX.com, NBC. Which states saw the most COVID deaths in 2021? America's least vaccinated. Oh, no. The least vaccinated states. And you can see that Florida is actually in the top of the list of deaths per capita. It's interesting. So they say. I don't know. Maybe people disagree with this, don't like the data. I don't care. I don't think it matters. In fact, I think this is a very powerful statement. People would choose dangerous freedom over totalitarian security. Let me stress for you again. When you see Florida being listed as one of the higher death rates, you see the states that are considered to be the most dangerous, the ones that are gaining new residents. People are willing to take risks to live freely. Not in New York. Not in New York, not in California, not in Illinois. No, Illinois just announced they're doing their mandates, their vaccine mandates for businesses. I'm sorry, Chicago did. And so you have people in New York. You had a guy just get arrested at a Burger King. The people behind the counter are like, please leave me alone. I don't want to be involved. They don't want to stand up for what they believe in. They don't know. They don't care. That's going to be the kind of person that remains in those states. The kind of person that just serves the state without question. Well, the people who are leaving these states are the people who are more likely to choose for themselves. Yeah, I think it's going to contribute to geographical polarization. Which brings me to the thread from Michelle Tandler, a wake-up call from Democrats telling them, please pay attention. Now, as many of you know, the left and the media likes to say, Tim Pool, right-wing, conservative. It's really funny because every single person I have on Timcast IRL is like, dude, you're not a conservative. Yeah. So what makes it that a person is a conservative? Well, it used to be that a conservative believed in traditional values. And if you do, then you are, fighting for traditional marriage and families or whatever. And progressives are all about, cultural revolution, transgender rights, things like that. Okay, well, I don't completely disagree with the left on many of those issues. In fact, I argue in favor of many of the left's ideas when it comes to, say, systemic racism. So then what actually makes someone a conservative? If you call out the Democrats for burning their states to the ground, yes. Nancy Pelosi is trash. Joe Biden is trash. Mitch McConnell is trash. Lindsey Graham, they're all bad. They're all bad. But when you point out that Democrats control the cultural institutions, or at least their allies do, and that they've run California, New York, and Illinois into the ground, you must be conservative. Because the progress that the left claims to be after, the progressives, is what's going on in California. Is that progress? All right, well, I'll tell you what. If progress to you is skyrocketing crime, homelessness, human feces in the streets, then I guess I'm not progressive. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what progressive is. I think progressive is supposed to be fighting for civil rights and being nice to each other, respecting each other, and bringing about world peace. It's not, though. Let's be real. It's just a name. It's a name of a political tribe. They want power. Their states are being burned to the ground, figuratively and literally. They want power. Well, for too long, many moderates, liberals, Democrat types did not pay attention. Which brings me to the thread from Michelle Tandler. She writes on Substack. This is a tweet thread that I wrote on December 26th. It is 1,998 words, which Grammarly says is 7 minutes and 57-second read time. If you have thoughts or reactions, please comment below. Well, you know me, I talk really fast. I'm pretty sure I can read through this much faster than in 7 minutes. Michelle writes, here's what confuses me about San Francisco. We have the most liberal left-wing government and population in the country. We have a $13 billion budget, and we have 8,000 people sleeping in the rain this week. Can someone please explain this to me? Well, I'll pause there and say, yeah, I can. You see, the people of California went to the voting booth and decided to start a fire. The fire then burned down several parts of the state. And then next year, these same people said, well, when we start a fire this time, it'll be different. My point is, if you keep voting for the same thing over and over again, and your problems aren't getting solved, that's the definition of insanity, according to the internet. To stick your hand in the fire and get burned and go, ouch, let me do it again. To stick your hand in the fire once again and think this time the fire won't burn me. I'm sorry. That's not how it works. Michelle writes, what do progressives stand for exactly? I thought it was about making things more fair, about standing up for the little guy, about human rights, equality, equity, compassion. San Francisco looks like the least compassionate city on the planet. Yeah, how about that? The slums of Mumbai look cleaner than the streets of downtown SF. This isn't just the Tenderloin, it's Soma, parts of Mission, Dogpatch. We have thousands of people wandering around looking like they're on the brink of death. This is why people use the term zombie. I have been a registered Democrat for 18 years. I grew up in a progressive family and went to a progressive school and have mostly progressive friends. Yet what I see in SF, if this is what progressives stand for, I want the opposite. Well now, 18-year Democrat Miss Michelle, you must be far right. No, let's be real. She's a real person, noticing real problems, asking real questions. What do we stand for? Michelle, I stand for everything you stand for. I want people to live better lives. I want people to not be homeless. I want to help them. I want to get the streets cleaned up. No more human waste. I want it to be sustainable. I want to help provide. What the Democrats are doing is none of that. Now, Republicans don't do that, but don't claim to. Republicans are, or at least tend to be in many ways, the social Darwinists. Let the strong survive, or at least they used to be. Now you're getting populists moving over to the Republican side because they're like the Democrats are just burning everything to the ground. And people are starting to realize it. She goes on to say the words used here, harm reduction, housing first, criminal justice, social justice, equity, they don't align with what I'm seeing at all. Our strategy might as well be called harm increased, housing last, victim injustice, social injustice, and unfairness. This is the message. Social injustice, unfairness. She says, yesterday I went for a drive in the rain. This is what is happening in San Francisco right now. I am sorry to force readers of this thread to bear witness to this, but I think it's important to acknowledge what we are all ignoring. I can't tell you how many videos I've done. The plague back in California. Yeah. Where is our $13 billion going exactly? How do we only have 3,000 shelter beds when 8,000 are unsheltered in the streets? How is this an American city? I just finished the book San Francisco. If you care about San Francisco, if you care about our cities, if you care about America, give it a read. Here's the problem, Michelle. You're voting for people who don't care about America. There's two kinds. Some that want power. You vote for them and they say, I don't know, I'll just use my position in Congress to pass laws that favor the stocks I purchase. Or give me advanced knowledge of changes in the industry which I can use to monetize, like Nancy Pelosi. Or you get people who say that America is evil inherently and they want to burn it all to the ground. And from the ashes of the old, they will build anew. That's who you're voting for when you vote progressive. She says, I'm starting to develop a seriously dark view of the progressive politicians in charge of our town. They have absolute power, act like a regime, and talk often how broken the system is. Are the homeless their foot soldiers, mascots, mercenaries? You have to wonder. With the funds we have as a city, state, and nation, is this situation on purpose? Well, I certainly think so. She goes on. We saw what SF was capable of when the pandemic hit. We had testing sites up in days, hotels converted into shelter, funds flowing. Yet here we are. Is this nefarious? I'm going to pause and say, yes. Isn't it obvious? Progressives tend to blame Republicans for almost everything. Yet here we are, not a Republican in sight, and I think we may be the most damaged city on the planet. Nowhere is there such inequality. I've never seen destitution at this scale. So here are my questions to progressives. What do you stand for? What do you believe? What are your strengths as a political group? Weaknesses? Why, after decades of progressive rule in SF, are 8,000 people in the streets? Why do we have the highest overdose rate in the nation? Why do we have the highest property crime rate? Why do we have fewest children per capita? What are the biggest wins of progressives in SF? What are progressives most proud of here? Who are the strongest public servants of the Progressive Party? Why do you think we should continue on this path? Recently, I've been having flashbacks to junior year when I ran for class representative and lost by 5 votes. My opponent promised candy vending machines, parties, all kinds of fun things. He won and didn't do a darned thing all year, of course. Thought experiment. What would San Francisco look like if Republicans were in charge, if moderates ran things? If we had 2-party rule instead of 1? Downtown is boarded up. The children of the Tenderloin are begging the mayor to arrest drug dealers. Our school system's on the brink of state takeover. Our DA is completely over his skis and a defender at heart. We are in crisis, and yes, we voted for this. We know. We probably have more Black Lives Matter signs up than any city in the nation. 40% of our homeless people are Black. Do their lives matter? Or is this just about virtue signaling and moral grandstanding? This past Thursday afternoon, I dialed into the Board of Supervisors meeting about the emergency order to refund the police. Our board sat through 10 hours of debate and public comment. It was astonishing. Caller after caller saying, defund the police. Well, I'll tell you this. Oh, I know what world you get when you defund the police. And I got to say, I'm more in line with defunding the police after what we saw in New York City. I know full well what could come. But when you have a combination of recklessness and you have to, adding on top of that, crime, recklessness, and police abuse, I don't care. She goes on to say the number one advocate for the homeless, Jennifer Friedenbach, called in to say, vote no on Black Lives Don't Matter. She is the head of the coalition SF and has for decades fought against shelters, saying they warehouse people. She is for housing first. Well, here we are. I would really like to know if she stands by her advocacy. I personally believe she is the person most responsible for this tragedy unfolding in our streets. But we are all responsible. We are allowing this insanity. I'd also like to know why the loudest voices right now against changing our approach are all white progressive women. We have Kate Chatfield from the DA's office, Jennifer Friedenbach from COH, Hillary Ronan of D8, all yelling about defunding the police. What is this about? It's amazing, isn't it? The policies put forth by white progressive women are causing these problems, so saith a white moderate woman. I can't tell you exactly why or what, but Women tend to be, millennial women are more likely to be Democrat than millennial men, though it's not that big of a difference. It's around 20 or so percent. She says, I've been thinking a lot recently about the concept of civic duty. What is our responsibility as a citizenry? What is civil society? What does it mean to contribute to your neighborhood, city, state, nation? One of my friends recently woke up to find a homeless person sleeping on the front step of her multi-million-dollar home. I asked her what she did. We closed the blinds. I think this is such a metaphor for what's going on here. San Francisco turning its head. That's right. I am just so confused. If progressives believe in big government, then why aren't they doing the bare minimum? The minimum that even F.A. Hayek spoke of in The Road to Serfdom in 1944. He's a famous libertarian. He believed in providing food, shelter, and clothing. It's amazing, isn't it? She goes on to mention, maybe it's tribalism. Hate Inc. from Matt Taibbi. Excellent book. Maybe. But I don't like playing this game. When people say Republicans do it and the right does it and the left does it and Tim Pool only criticizes the left, I don't like Republicans. I like the libertarians. Not all of them. Mises Caucus guys are all right. Donald Trump was a populist. He agreed with Bernie Sanders on so much. And there's an opportunity to engage. But let me explain to all of you guys. There are good people on the left. Crystal Ball, Kyle Klinsky. Big fan. Don't agree with a lot of their politics, but they're good people. Watch their content. They get things wrong. Jimmy Dore, one of the best. Clearly on the left. But the issue is we're all willing to call out the establishment. We're all willing to call out the lies and the manipulation because we all want the world to be better. We just disagree on how to get there. But then you get other groups. I'm not going to name them. High-profile Democrat personalities on YouTube who do not operate in good faith. And there's certainly people on the right who are similar, but they're not that big. Steven Crowder operates in good faith. He absolutely does. I disagree with him on policy quite a bit, but we agree on reality. We agree on facts. We do fact checking. We do research. We don't agree on everything when it comes to data and research, but we agree to have honest conversations. I think Jimmy Dore is the same way. The left hates him. When you look at this article, you start to understand it's not about left and right. It's about Rachel Maddow, the lying, manipulating press, those who walk in lockstep with them, and those who challenge the machine. I see Crystal Ball, Kyle Klinsky, and Jimmy Dore as people who challenge the machine. When we disagree on some policies, that's fine. But we all want to challenge that machine. We all want, I think, pretty sure, we're all opposed to the wars and the conflict, and we want peace. We want the water to be working in this country. We want people to have clean drinking water, food, shelter. And there are a variety of ways we can go about doing that. But we can have those conversations when someone's acting in good faith. But what about when these politicians simply, well, they just want power? You see, here's the problem. When you have certain individuals on the left that believe that voting for these people will solve these problems, even if we think they are good people, you get more of these problems. That's why I think it's so amazing to see this article from Michelle basically saying, we want the opposite of what the progressives are doing. Then you're going to have to vote against them, to be honest. And you might not get exactly what you want. She ends the article by saying, my mind is swirling a bit. Could use some help and insight. I'm clearly quite upset about what I'm seeing in my backyard, both here in SF, but also more broadly in our country. If you have any ideas or you relate, please do share. There's another post. This by a man named Hari Raghavan. Hari on Twitter is a loyalist to some causes. He says a builder abstract ops co. And sure, he doesn't say he's an angel investor. He tweets. So here we go. I'm moving out of the Bay Area. This is obviously not a fresh opinion, but the framing may be slightly controversial. My biggest reason is that I believe the Bay Area is no longer the best crucible for the American dream. This is not an FSF post. This is a saddened recap of what could have been. I've had a tremendous time here, which had nothing to do with tech or startups. It had to do with my family, the people, the food, the culture, the debates, the nature. He goes on to mention that he is, in fact, moving to Florida. He says, this is such a cliche, but we're moving to Miami. I know there's plenty to be apprehensive about. Worse politics from our perspective. Its own superficiality, weather issues, critters, guns, but lots to love about food, warmth, service, industry, vibrancy. I'm sure we'll find plenty to complain about. Maybe not because we'll hopefully we'll be less neurotic, but we're eager for a new chapter and mint a new identity for ourselves. Here's to the newest corner of the world where upstarts are gathering. Allie Beth Stuckey responds, How How do you write everything you just did and conclude that Florida has worse politics than SF? Clearly, that's not true, or you wouldn't be moving there. Florida Dems will do the same thing to Miami that California Dems did to SF. My goodness. Fact. From the Daily Mail. LA County Sheriff slams woke San Francisco DA Chesa Bowden for flying in the face of common sense by calling crackdown on out-of-control smash-and-grab thefts a knee-jerk reaction. California, in my opinion, is just burning to the ground. And then you have this one. The worst NYC crimes committed in 2021 are thanks to shaky bail reform law. This is progressive policy, and it may be contributing to people fleeing the state. But I'm not here to advocate for the right or the left. No, I have my opinions, and they don't necessarily fall into any category, to be completely honest. Probably more slightly left on a lot of issues, but also rooted in reality, like true stories, such as Joe Biden was withholding U.S. aid to Ukraine in an effort to get a prosecutor fired because the prosecutor, or I should say, to get a prosecutor fired who was investigating Burisma, where his son was on the board. Draw your conclusions on intent. It's true. Just look at Matt Taibbi's reporting on the issue. But the left doesn't believe it. Now, I'll tell you this. I think bail reform is the right move. And I would personally rather live with the risks. I would rather have risky freedom than totalitarian security. But here's the problem. What if you have totalitarian risk? What if you have anarcho-tyranny? New York is a place that institutes their bail reform, which puts more criminals on the street. Now, on the surface, I can say you should not lock people up without proving guilt. Now, if there are some exceptions, if someone's a violent criminal, there's probable cause, okay, well, then you're remanded out of a fear for people's safety. It's a difficult line to figure out where we draw the line, innocent until proven guilty. The problem is that in New York, you can't keep and bear arms. You can't defend yourself. You have a tyrannical state that will lock you up, that will shut you down, that will kick your 5-year-old child out of a restaurant because he doesn't have his papers on him. And then they will release criminals onto the streets. You will be the victim of crimes, both from the state and from the criminal population. Now, who would want to live there? You see, herein lies the problem. The policies are meaningless. They're just trying to placate enough people to get enough votes to stay in power. You need only look at Bill de Blasio dancing with his wife in Times Square last year while you were forced to stay home, barred from coming. Isn't that creepy? And why don't these Democrats realize it? Why don't these moderates realize it? Why do people keep falling for these tricks? Well, they're trapped in the bubble, man. They're trapped in the matrix. So it's your job to red pill them, I guess. Sharing videos like this, having calm, rational, and peaceful conversations. Don't insult them. You see, this is what really frustrates me about so many people on the internet, especially many people on the right, and it really is the left. Come on, let's be real. I think the problem is there are many people who are unwilling to try to convert. You know, you saw the drama I had on Timcast IRL. I asked one of our guests, I don't want to rehash, but I just asked him, don't you think you should approach people with compassion? And he said, no, I don't care. I don't care about their problems. They're fake problems. And I'm like, okay, you don't want to solve anything. You just want others to suffer. Misery loves company. Crabs in a bucket, whatever you want to call it. People want to feel, if I'm suffering, you should suffer too. I'll tell you how I feel. If I'm doing well, I want you to do well too. That's how I feel. You know, my worldview is a rising tide lifts all ships. If I see someone who's in trouble and I can help them, I'll try. Then you have the other side of the coin. The people who think if my life sucks, yours should too. And I think that is a big divider in the culture war. You have many people on the left. I'll give you an example. Elon Musk. They say he's worth $200 billion, the richest man on the planet. Why? Because he started a company called Tesla. The company makes money, you know, but does it make billions of dollars? No. But the investors who buy the stock have driven the price up because everybody wants a piece of Tesla. Thus, Elon Musk ends up being worth around $200 billion. They say he's the richest man on the planet and he's not paying taxes. Well, he's not paying taxes because he didn't make any money. But they don't get it. They don't care. So Elon Musk says, fine. He sells off a good portion of his stock, makes around, I think, 36 billion or so, pays $11 billion in taxes, saying, there, I paid more taxes than anyone in history. And what happens? They attack him again. New posts, new rage. Well, it's still not enough. Give it all up. What's he supposed to do? Elon Musk sells all his houses. Then someone says, yeah, but he's living with a rich friend. He sold all his houses. Then Elon Musk says, fine, I'll give $11 billion to the government. And they say, not enough. Stop bragging. You're not giving enough. Even though Elon Musk is only getting that money from the sale of the stock. He doesn't have it in cash. They don't care. They just say, I want you to suffer. It's a cruel and sick world. And I certainly think there's a lot of conservatives who are also bad people. And they want you to suffer. These are the people who laugh and chortle when people die. I'm not a fan at all. When I see the left, that guy Aaron Danielson got shot and killed in Portland, and they all started cheering and clapping and laughing. Disgusting. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and Donald Trump said, sorry to hear it. She was a tremendous woman. Really? Donald Trump. That's right. And that's why I don't hate the guy. I like Donald Trump. I'm the biggest Trump fan in the world. I think he's kind of an a-hole. I think there's a lot of things about him. He's a bad guy. But I think he's nice. I think he's generous. But I also think he's a hothead. I've heard the stories. He goes down to his businesses. He hands $100 bills to everybody. Because he's rich. He can. Because he's generous. But he's also kind of a dick, right? So I'm not the biggest fan of the guy for those reasons. But if even Donald Trump can say nice things about Ruth Bader Ginsburg online and in person in an interview, why does there have to be people gloating and laughing and mocking her demise? Here's the challenge. As we sit here saying we want everyone's lives to be better, you have many people on the left who want to make your life worse. They tell you that the right wants to make your life worse, but the right is fractured. They don't do anything. The Republicans obstruct. The Democrats in office don't care. And that's why SF is burning to the ground. And then you have leftists who are just like, if my life's going to suck, so is yours. And no amount of money you give, no amount of taxes paid will ever appease people who are just looking to make you feel pain. That is not everyone on the left. As I mentioned, you've got good people like Jimmy Dore, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske. I shout them out as often as I can or regularly. But there is a dominant establishment culture, and many on the left, even the good people, play into it and support it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and support those who are gloating over death or the Republican establishment. No, I want change. I want a populist to get in. If that's Donald Trump, so be it, if it upends the establishment. And I know he's not perfect, and I'll try to tell people to do better, to be better. But so long as people keep blindly just believing Democrats are going to save you, your cities and your states will fall apart, and you'll be forced to flee. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.